We are currently sat in Polytunnel on Outbloom Flower Farm, which is a small-scale flower farm based just outside Lampeter. Betws Bledgers is the village in West Wales. Want to grow flowers that people love, that are difficult to get elsewhere, in a way that sort of fits into the wider ecosystem and is not as damaging for the planet as much of commercial flower growing sadly is. So if you're in a supermarket, buying flowers, particularly out of season flowers, is one of the most sort of carbon costly things you can do. So up there with beef, say. It's worse out of season, so that there's a really interesting book that I first sort of started finding out about this kind of thing in, called How Bad Are Bananas by Mike Berners-Lee, who is the brother of Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the internet. And so he sort of goes into carbon costs of all sorts of different things. And one of them was a single red rose, sort of for Valentine's Day. So an out-of-season red rose, and it has an incredibly high carbon cost. I think at that point, it was possibly the most carbon-intensive thing you could buy in a supermarket. General rule is if your flowers are coming from far away, so a lot of flowers here in the UK and Europe come from Kenya, which is, they can grow year-round because it's nice and warm, but then things have to be air freighted, so because flowers are very, very perishable. Or a lot of things come from the Netherlands, but things there tend to be grown under light and heat, which is also incredibly expensive. As anyone who has ever tried to, say, heat a house would know, it takes quite a lot of energy to do that. So basically, the rule of thumb is if you can buy flowers that have been grown close by and flowers that are in season, they're going to be way, way, way later on the carbon cost. In season is quite interesting as well, because I've noticed seeing in, say, the big internet florists that you can order flowers from, a lot of them will say seasonal, and the things that they're putting in are very much not in season. They just have the seasonal feel, but you'll still get sunflowers in February and roses in December and whatever, and things that they call seasonal. So knowing what seasonal is useful or important if you want to try and minimize, say, your carbon cost in buying flowers. We got into growing flowers partially because of wanting to do something tangible to help with the impending climate crisis and cut down on this carbon cost of flowers. You know, the way we look at it is any stem that somebody buys from us is probably a stem that a supermarket or somewhere that is imported and will have a much higher carbon cost. So that's one big component of it. The other part is I just love flowers. Like I've always grown things. I've always had allotments. I've grown veg, I've grown flowers basically all my life, but never really had the opportunity or the space to do it as a commercial thing. Another book that sort of impacted or sort of encouraged this move is from, there's a really great climate scientist called Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. And she has this great Venn diagram, which is a way she likes to encourage people how they can personally do something about climate change. And that is, take something you're good at, something that needs doing, and something that you love, and find the center of those things and do that. And so that's kind of where we ended up, is flowers. We grow only cut flowers, and there's an amazing thing that happens in sort of late summer when there's a lot of the flowers out. If you go and sit in any of the beds, they're just humming. There's so much insect life that shows up when you have flowers. You know, if you're just starting growing flowers, the easiest ones are probably annuals. So there's lots of really sort of cheerful annuals that are super easy to grow, things that you can direct sow, like, you know, nasturtiums and cosmos, and again, the herbs. I love herbs, and I think maybe a lot of people don't think of them as flowers because you usually don't use the flowers culinarily. You pick the leaves, but a lot of them do have really beautiful flowers. It's a thing that I keep sort of having to push against. Is there? I think there's an impression that flowers that you might see in your garden are sort of local or British grown flowers don't last as long as sort of flowers you might get in the supermarket. Um, and that is true sometimes because a lot of the flowers you get in the supermarket are weirdly indestructible and last for 3-4 weeks, which is somewhat terrifying. A lot of commercial flowers are bred specifically for longevity and ease of shipping. So anyway, but I always try and say that the type of flowers that I'm growing should at least last a week, week and a half, if they're cut at the right stage. So that's the main thing. Make up the bunches to take to market. Flowers in general don't do as well with too much fertility. So particularly nitrogen, if you have really high nitrogen, you'll end up with a lot of leaves on your flowers and probably not as many flowers as you would like. So if you're growing your flowers alongside, say, your leafy veg that want a lot of nitrogen, you might end up with just a lot of leaf on your flowers and not much flower. So if you do want to grow flowers alongside other things in a veg patch, say, it's probably best to put them in places that are lower fertility. And around perennials is also great, because perennials tend to need less fertility than annuals. And so yeah, flowers around sort of mixed in with your perennials can be a really nice thing to do. There's a lot of great shrubby things as well, so I cut a lot of willow. There's really beautiful curly willows. There's lots of willow that get all kinds of amazing catkins earlier in the year when there's not much else out. And sort of overall on the farm here, and we're not quite there yet, but I'm aiming for around a 50-50 split between annual flowers and perennial flowers. The annuals tend to be the big showy ones that you think of, but another sort of thing that's come up this year that makes perennials really helpful for a cut flower grower specifically is they tend to flower based on day length rather than on temperature. And this year's been quite cold and wet, so a lot of my annuals are really late, but the perennials sort of flower on a much more predictable schedule, which when you're sort of trying to schedule a million different crops to flower when you want them to, that can be incredibly helpful.